You're listening to Stand Tall and Own It, the podcast for high-performing female leaders who are ready to make an impact by discovering the safety that comes from understanding their own value and exercising their own authority. I'm your host, Andrea Johnson, and I'm here to tell you it is time to just truly be you, my strong friend. It's time to stand tall and own it. Hey there, welcome back to another episode of Stand Tall and Own It. I am your host, Andrea Johnson, and I am excited to continue our conversation about things that I have used in my life, tools per se, that have helped me to grow and lay a really good foundation that helps me weather the storms of really tough years or really specific trying times, or to even just survive and thrive through like an entire year like 2022 or 2023 was for me. So today we're going even deeper into some of the tools that I use for myself. We're going to talk about the Enneagram. And I have Jackie Brewster here today, who is a certified Enneagram coach and experiential specialist. And we're going to talk about what that means. She and her husband, Stephen, started a consulting company. They help people, teams, organizations, all who feel overwhelmed. They help them overcome those feelings. Doesn't that sound amazing? She focuses specifically on helping people and organizations uncover and discover who they are and how to grow towards health in their personal lives as well as their corporate roles through the teachings of the Enneagram and biblical truths. Yes, she is also in ministry like me. Jackie is passionate about seeing people discover who they are and loves to help them grow towards health in every area of their lives, which that is exactly what the Enneagram has helped me do. She is a lifelong learner and always reading and exploring to help keep herself at the forefront of knowledge so that she can bring the best to her clients, which means, I promise you, she's constantly growing herself. I cannot wait for this conversation. Let's go meet Jackie Brewster. Hey there, Jackie. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am excited you're here. As I have just shared in my intro with my listeners, you are an Enneagram coach and experiential specialist. I don't even know what that means. I know what the Enneagram coach part is. For those who either don't know you at all, which is kind of crazy because you got a big following on Instagram, your Enneagram with JB. And for those who may not understand or know your background, could you just give us a little bit of a bio, a little bit of your story?
Sure. I have been in the Enneagram space coaching for about 6+ years, but I've studied the Enneagram for 15 years. I started on this journey with the Enneagram with a girlfriend who gave me a book after a very crazy day at the park with my twins. I have 4 children. The last 2 are twins. And they're like nothing else I've ever experienced, honestly. So they're 15 now and they're beautiful souls, but raising them, like it was difficult. So that day at the park, they took off running and they were all over the place. And my girlfriend wrangled them with me, put them in the car. And then later on that day, she said, "I'm sending you this book." And 3 days later, I got this book in the mail, The Wisdom of the Enneagram by Don Rizonos Hudson. I looked at it and thought, oh my gosh, what satanic book did she just send me because of the symbol on the front of it? So, I should have probably started with I've been in ministry for 25+ years. And so, at this point, this was quite a while ago. This was 13 years ago, or maybe longer. I don't know. But when she gave me this book. And so, that was the beginning. I looked at this book, this weird cover, and thought, what in the world? Started to read about it and thought, oh my goodness, she's trying to fix me. And I think I need to be fixed. Like I was not okay, you guys. Read things about myself, which then just prompted me on this long journey of self-discovery, like self-awareness, healing, honesty with myself, my story. And in that space, being in ministry, I was a pastor's wife. So there's not a ton of room to not be okay. There's not a ton of room for our families to not be okay. And we were not okay. And so the journey of the Enneagram and the work that I do on the experiential side too, which is helping people get into the story of their life through different modalities. So I help people with, sculpting or writing things out or visionary things, meditation, just different ways that help people get into the story of their life. So that's a little bit about me as far as like how I got to where I am today,
Yeah.
and what I love what I do. I love that I get to hold space for people and help them uncover and discover more about themselves through this tool of the Enneagram. It is just a tool. That's all
Mhm.
that it is.
Yeah.
But it's a helpful tool. So,
Well, and to say that you love what you do, that tells me
mhm,
that so did you have like you said you have children and we
mhm,
both have 15-year-olds at this point. Mine is an adopted son. And
mhm.
I don't know that an adopted son is the same or a 15-year-old son is the same as two 15-year-old. I think you said your daughters. Um,
Yes.
I don't
I
know that
don't
that's
think
the
so.
same.
I
Um,
really, yeah,
but
probably not.
for us, it was in the parenting arena, it was
Mhm.
adopting and having no idea what ADHD was
Mm,
or how
mhm,
to handle that or how to parent
mhm.
in that way.
Right.
And even just looking at the Enneagram and even because he's 15, so he's willing to self-identify
Mhm.
in the Enneagram,
Right.
and I think I'm pretty sure he's a 7 wing 6.
Mhm.
And so that makes so much sense now, even just looking all the way back
Mhm.
at different
Right.
things. So to hear this, you come at it from what sounds like a very healed place, which I know that
Mm.
healing is
Mhm.
always a constant battle or
It is
a
constant.
constant
Mhm.
road.
Right. Mhm.
But to say our family was not okay,
We were
and
not okay.
now
Mhm.
we are. Now we are
Yep.
better, or now we are on
Mhm.
the right road.
Yeah, we
Um,
are. We sought a lot of therapy, like we all of us, family therapy, individual therapy, couples therapy, all the therapies, intensives, like we were well supported by our church as far as therapy goes. And so we took advantage of the opportunities that we were given to seek help when we needed help.
yeah.
And the church staff that we were part of, they were not judgmental or anything like that. They were very supportive of like,
Mm,
hey, I don't think you're okay. And I was not okay. There was
yeah.
a day that I put my kids in the car and I drove that Sunday morning to church with tears streaming down my face, with worship music playing, and the kids, probably chatting to each other. They were little. And I thought, I don't think I can do this anymore. I don't
Mm,
think I can do it anymore. And so at that point, my husband met me outside the bathroom and I was weeping. And he was like, "What is the matter with you?" And
mm,
I was like, "I'm not okay." And he's like, "Do you need to go to Starbucks?" I'm like, "No, I need way more than Starbucks. Like this, I am dying."
mm,
Um, and that was the beginning, with a lot of support and a lot of love, from, our community and our family. That was the beginning of like, "Okay, how do we get you okay? How do we get you
yeah.
okay?" And I had to do so much work. I mean, that's the reality of this, is like, in order for me to hold space for other people, I had to do my work first. And so I come at this approach, from a very gentle, kind place
Mm,
around, let me help you by holding space for you to just be you. And what
yeah.
does that look like?
Yeah, that's beautiful. And to hear, we've both been in ministry. I was a missionary
Mhm,
kid. My dad was a
mhm,
pastor.
mhm.
And then I met my husband in seminary. We have been in ministry. So, like when I met him, he was a youth minister. And then
Wow.
when we got
Mhm,
married, he took his first church. And so we've always been in smaller churches, but
mhm,
I've had unfortunately, the days that I've had where I was weeping going to church was
mhm.
literally when we lived next door in the pasture in
Right.
the parsonage,
Mhm.
and,
Yes.
it's like I really had nowhere to go,
Right.
and, so to hear though too that your story involves a supportive church,
Mhm,
a
mhm.
supportive group, because that's not always the case.
That is not,
I
you're
work with
right.
a lot of
Mhm,
women, I speak with a lot of women where that is
mhm.
not the case,
Right.
and, I can tell you I've been through a couple of church splits that
Mhm,
make it's really easy to think that things are your fault, especially when
mhm.
people sit you down and tell you they're your fault,
Oh, yeah.
and
Mhm,
to do this kind of work, because
mhm,
people the reason I'm doing this series is
mhm,
because, uh, people said, "How is it that you made it through these times
mm,
and we didn't
mhm.
realize you were, suffering?" Well, part of that is
Right.
'cause I'm really good at a mask, but
Yes, me too.
part of it too is I
Mhm.
did a lot of the work that
Right,
meant that I could show up for you and
right.
still then go heal and still
Mhm.
come back and show I had
Right,
enough energy to show up for you, and I had
right.
enough energy to lead and to work on my business and to still be a
Mhm, mhm.
mom and to still teach Sunday
Right.
school, all of those
Mhm,
things, and the Enneagram has been a really big catalyst for us
mhm,
and our family to do the same
mhm.
thing.
Right.
So really quick, for people,
Mhm.
let's like do some real basics, right?
Yes.
Because you joked
Mhm.
about the front of the book, that we've had people, and we have done two studies in our church, and
Mhm.
it really
Mhm.
helped, even if it's small groups. My husband can now
Mhm.
say stuff. My husband is a nine-wing one, and so
Okay.
there's things which makes him a great pastor. Um,
Mhm.
it also means that we don't move anywhere near the speed of light like I wish we
Mhm.
could, but
Yes.
because that's just who I am.
Mhm.
But he can actually say things from the pulpit
Mhm.
to speak relationally about something
Mhm.
because of studying the Enneagram.
Right. Mhm.
So, e Enneagram 101, anybody, 'cause we're not gonna have, like, any, like, slides or anything here, but
Mm-mm.
for somebody who's never really looked at it or has heard the
Mhm.
word or called it an anagram or
Mhm.
whatever,
I have a friend that calls it the Enneagram,
the
like the name
Enneagram,
Annie, the
yes.
Enneagram, and I was like, "Well, okay." Yeah.
Whatever, it doesn't
Mhm.
matter. So give us, like, just a basic rundown. How do we look at it?
Okay, so it is an ancient personality typing system. There are different things that you're going to read about stuff, but I would encourage you guys to like dig into the truth of things. Tyler Zake has a great resource for as a Christian, should you use the Enneagram? So that is a great resource for anybody that is questioning, should you use it, whatever, or the history of it. But the Enneagram, it's just a personality typing system. What it does is it gives us an idea of where things come from. We're all different human beings. Like there's no, there's no cookie cutters. There's
Mhm,
no two. I have twins and they're different. They're not the same, even though they came out at the same time. They're still different. And so what the Enneagram does is it gives us an opportunity to see our patterns of behavior. It slows things down for us a bit if we want to look at it. It offers us a glimpse into self-awareness. It offers us a glimpse into when we're healthy, this is what we look like. When we're not healthy, this is what we look like. And in that average range of our personality or the autopilot, this is how we're showing up. And if we can really begin to understand that autopilot place, that everyday unconscious way that we're showing up, we're going to
mhm,
understand that there's a lot of fear, worry, and afraid in the ways that we show up. And we don't even know that we're doing it from that space. We're not aware that we have figured out how to show up in the world, how to get love, how to get our needs met, and how to keep ourselves safe
yep,
through different patterns of behavior that we've developed over the course of our lifetime.
mhm,
So when I teach the Enneagram, I teach it nurture and nature. It's both. We are born into this world with a certain disposition, and that does not change. Our disposition does not change. Um, and so I think that that's important for you to know about the Enneagram. So when you're thinking about like, I've got 4 children.
mm,
They're raised in the same home. None
mhm,
of them are the same personality type, because they all come into the world with their own disposition. They all come into the world with their own temperament. Okay, so it's that nature piece, and then the nurture piece. How children are nurtured within their home environments, what that looks like, and how they have to learn how to get love, to get their needs met, and keep themselves safe. Those 3 basic human needs are cradle to grave. How do I
yep,
get love? How do I get my needs met? And how do I keep myself safe? So when we're looking at the Enneagram and unpacking it, that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at
mm,
patterns of behavior. I mean, I coach people. That's what I do full time. I coach people all over the world, and I literally just listen. I'm listening. I'm putting things together. Like what is you know what is consistent. We repeat patterns. We repeat what's familiar over and over and over and over again, and we repeat what we don't repair. So we oftentimes can look at things that are not working anymore. And so when I'm looking at patterns of behavior within the Enneagram system, there's 9 different personality types. There's 9 different colored lenses, and in that there is a growth track. Like there's a growth, like an area you move towards growth. There's also an area or a number that you move towards in stress. So we're going to see some different parts of yourself come out in stress. And then there's your dominant number. The numbers to the right and to the left are your wings. Okay. And when we're thinking about this, you guys think like a bird. The wings have to be attached to the bird for it to fly. So they
mm,
have to be attached. Okay. So the wings are the numbers to the right and to the left. And those, you have access to some of the characteristics of those personality types as well. In all of this is like, how do I move into the world get love, get my needs met, and keep
Mhm.
myself safe. And
Mm.
so that's the approach that I take with the Enneagram. Does that make sense in the
Yes,
way that I unpacked it?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and, I've not read I've seen The Wisdom of the Enneagram, and you said
Mhm.
Tyler Zake. Is that how you pronounce his name? I've always pronounced it Zach.
Listen, I pronounce it wrong all the time too. I think it's Zake though. He's probably like rolling his eyes right
It's
now if he listens to
it's
this.
Zach though,
It
right?
is, it
Okay.
is. And I'm like, it's Zach, but it's not. I think it's like, he's brilliant.
Yeah, well, it's like people say Andrea or Angela or so
Yeah.
it's like I answered
Right.
a little bit. I used to answer to Adrian as well. Um, but I will say my husband and I are finishing up. He did Tyler Zake also
Mhm.
has um the gospel. So if you're
Yes.
just I want to say really quick, there are plenty of people who listen to this podcast who are not from a faith-based orient.
Yep.
So there are plenty of Enneagram books
Mhm.
out there for you. And
Yes.
if you want to recommend a couple of those, like the Wisdom of
Right.
the Enneagram, we'll
Yes.
speak to those as well.
Okay.
But if you are a Christian listening to this and you want to approach it from a faith-based direction,
Mhm.
my husband and I are he has an individual devotion, a 40-day devotion for each of
Mhm.
the types.
Yes.
My husband he asked for it for Christmas, so I bought it
Mhm.
for him,
Mhm.
and it was 40 days of the Enneagram for peacemakers. I'm like,
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
nines, basically. And I don't know if that I've actually while we were recording talked about my type, but I'm the loyalist. I'm a 6. And
Mhm.
so walking through the Enneagram for loyalists. And there are ways in which as we walk through a typing system like this, and as we learn, one of the things I've learned, I love how you said there's healthy and there's not healthy, and then there's autopilot. And I think that within any given hour, I can be on all three.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
and I think that's something that people tend to not understand. And
Right.
so there have been a few of the daily devotions that I've been like, yeah, that one I've done that, right? I'm
Mhm.
good to go. And then
Yep.
the next day it'll like punch me right between the eyes.
Yes.
And in a good way, y'all. But
Mhm.
there
Mhm.
is, and I talk about this with my clients about growing because we talk a lot about, I work with them in core values and in communication.
Mhm.
And part of understanding yourself is understanding that there's nothing to fear in who we are.
Right.
Wired the way we are, and we are
Mhm.
all beautiful and unique, and we are
Right.
all good and beautiful and unique.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the things that I love about the Enneagram is that it allows me, like I joke
Mhm.
around and say, I'm a self-preservation, counterphobic, six-wing seven with
Mhm.
it's like I love
Mhm.
all the different titles, which shows everybody how unique I am.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
And so let's talk a little bit about well, first, are there books that you would recommend if they're not wanting to come at it from a faith perspective?
Yeah. So The Wisdom of the Enneagram by Don Rosa Russ Hudson is my favorite. Like
Okay.
I use that book to coach. It is worn out. The pages are falling out of that book. It's my
Okay.
favorite book. I love their approach. I think that they hold space well, beautifully for people. The Complete Enneagram by Beatrice Chestnut is
Okay.
another really great book. It's pretty heady, but I think it's really good. Richard Rohr has a couple books as
Yep.
well. Uh,
These are pretty famous. Chestnuts are pretty famous. I've heard
mhm.
hers is like really thick.
It is. It is. I have it right here. I teach out of it. So, I mean, all of the
Yeah.
books that I use, that she's got a great leadership, which is, do I have it right here? I use it all the time too. Uh, her leadership. This is this one right here. So types of the 9 types of leadership by Beatrice Chestnut. This
Mm,
is a fantastic book, especially in the leadership space that you're in. You might
yeah.
really, really like it. Your
Okay.
audience might love this book.
All right.
Um, I use that book all the time with my clients that are in corporate
Okay.
roles. So yeah.
Because I think it's so, and I love the way people usually coaches explain the Enneagram, as you said, lenses,
Hmm.
because it's a little bit like being with 9 sides to a lighthouse,
Hmm.
and you're
Hmm.
kind of moving around from window to window, seeing
Hmm.
things from the different perspectives.
Right.
For those who also don't know anything about it, could you just kind of give us a brief, what are the 9 types?
Sure. Uh, yes, I don't have it in front of me, but I can do this. I don't know. I don't
I'll
know what
help
happens
you.
to me. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, I'm like, you freeze. So if I freeze, help me out if you know the answer.
I will
So
jump in. I've been in it.
The
I've been in it in my church recently. So
Yes, and I know it, but okay, the Enneagram one is the moral perfectionist. So they really are focused on like doing the right thing. They don't want to make a mistake. They want to be above board. They want to be seen as good and right in the eyes of other people. The Enneagram 2 is a supportive advisor. They want to be a help to other people, like a helpmate. They want to be wanted and needed in different environments. So they're really attuned to people, highly relational. The Enneagram 3 is the achiever. They are driven. They want to be successful. They want to be seen as successful. They are fastest way from point A to point B. They are really, they're usually dynamic leaders, great
mm,
encouragers. The Enneagram 4 is a romantic individualist, and this one wants to be seen as unique. They are unique, but they want to be not just seen as unique, they want to be accepted as they are. Like, I don't want to have to change for you because I'm probably not going to change for you. I want to be accepted and valued as I am. And so
mhm,
that's what they're really seeking. The Enneagram 5 is the pioneer. So they are great, or the investigative thinker. So they are great at gathering information, figuring out, how to do things. They know a little about a lot. So
mhm.
they really do. And then typically they know a lot about one specific or a couple of different specific interests that they have. The Enneagram 6 is the loyalist. And so they are people that really rely on an institution, a belief system, or a group of people to feel safe and secure and to feel like they can go into the world and after the things that they want to do. But, they need a good solid base and they're going to be loyal to that base. The Enneagram 7 is the enthusiast. So they are big, I say this, but let me keep the big picture for the next one, but visionaries. They are all the things, all possibilities. They see life through possibility. They don't want to be held back. They see kind of things like, I'm a 7, I'm this personality type. And it's kind of like you see things like floating around and you kind of bring it in and then you make something with it.
Mm,
So I can take a lot of different pieces and it makes sense of something.
mm.
So they're great visionaries. Always up for an adventure, up for fun. Let's go do something. The Enneagram 8 is a protective challenger. So this is a really strong personality type that we see a lot in corporate roles, upper management. And they are big picture thinkers. They see the big picture and they want to gather people together to help them accomplish the big picture. So they see the big picture, but they don't necessarily want to be in the details of the big picture, if that makes sense. So, but they're excellent leaders, great protectors of people. They have a really, really tender heart, probably the most tender heart on the Enneagram. However, it's a little bit tricky to get to sometimes. They're pretty protected. So, and then our Enneagram 9s are the peacemakers, and our peacemakers, they are great at being able to see all sides of a situation. I oftentimes think like they're the owl. They sit on top of the Enneagram. They can see all sides of a situation. And they want to help bring resolve and bring peace and make sense of things for people. They also want to be unaffected by chaos and crazy environments. So there's that too. So there is some avoidance in that. But that's just a snapshot of the Enneagram. And I'd love to say one more thing about this.
Yes.
So with the Enneagram system, it's different than other personality typing systems like your Myers-Briggs or your DISC or some other things. So within the Enneagram system, we're not trying to put labels on you. We're not trying to tell you what you are and say like, okay, here, this is who you are. Now go act on it. So the true beautiful work of the Enneagram is for us to understand the patterns that we have put in place ourselves and to see if they're working for us and to understand that those labels or those patterns, they don't define who we are and we don't have to stay stuck in those places.
Mm,
So, like for the Enneagram 7, it would be like great start or horrible finisher. Well, I believed that about myself for a long time until I recognized that's not the healthiest version of me. That's the autopilot version of me for sure. But the
mhm,
healthier version of me is actually finishing what I start, accomplishing things and doing great things with my life that I feel like there's purpose behind.
mm.
But it took me owning my own story and my own decisions to get there. So the Enneagram, it's not a tool to label yourself with.
No.
Okay. It's a tool to help you explore who you are, why you're doing what you're doing, and see what areas of your life need to be readjusted for growth.
And I'm sitting here making notes. It's like you can see me typing, because hearing that piece, when you start doing like, if you're exposed first to the Enneagram in a group setting,
Mhm.
I think it's really easy to fall into looking across the table and
Right.
maybe somebody else. And I've lived through that, and
Mhm.
it's okay. I had already done some work prior,
Mhm.
and but I think that it's really easy to do that, and I think there are ways in which that can be very helpful because all of a
Mhm.
sudden I can look across and see a 2 and go, "Oh, now I understand
Right.
why this person's always in the midst of making
Mhm.
things happen and doing things
Right.
or serving." And I can look, and we all kinda joke, we can look at my husband who's the nines of all nines of all nines, and literally, like, after a sermon, people know I
Mhm.
used to tell him, "You can't talk to him after he's preached.
Mhm.
Just
Mhm.
he's done. He's literally that was his energy for the day.
Yep.
He is complete." And we have a four in our church who's
Mhm.
like, now I get why you just glaze over when I come talk to you after a
Mhm.
sermon.
Mhm.
And they've had to figure out how to meet each other's needs
Right.
in ways that have been very helpful. But at first, it was just like, as a six, like, oh, so you're afraid of everything. I'm like,
Mhm.
what? No.
Right.
Anyway,
No.
and,
Yes.
so I'd love to kind of look at and using, of course, me as an example, because I have an
Mhm.
Enneagram coach sitting across from me. Um,
Let's do it.
I know. I'd love to kind of share a few things about and kind of hear from you
Mhm.
how because I don't know that we have to know the Enneagram to become healthy. And I
No.
think a lot of
Mm-mm.
people look
Mhm.
at when they first get into the Enneagram, they think, but that's not me because I've already grown.
Right.
Yes. Woohoo.
Yes. Mhm.
Do you find that's the case?
Most of the time when my clients are coming to me, as we grow through sessions,
Hmm.
then we'll hit on things like, you don't do that anymore, you're not there anymore, you're not using that pattern anymore. Or they're more aware when they are using that pattern, like, oh, I did it again. Like I had one client, he messaged me this past week and he was like, I retail therapy the heck out of this weekend. And I was like, okay, you good? And he's like, nope, not good. Just needed you to know I'm not good, because he knew like my pattern, his pattern is to use retail therapy to help
Yeah.
him deal with the stressors that are in his life.
Yeah.
So I don't when I don't get a ton of people that are like, I'm so self-aware that I don't resonate.
Mm,
Um, I don't find, is that the question you're asking?
yeah, let me put it this way.
Okay,
Mm,
yeah.
for somebody who's been doing personal growth
Mhm.
for 37
Yes.
years,
Yes.
there's a lot of self-awareness that I didn't
Right.
realize and Enneagram explained for me.
Yes. Yes.
Let me put it that way.
So there'll be pieces when people have done a lot, because I have clients that see me and a therapist, which I love that. That
Yeah.
combo is fire.
Mm,
But we'll do work like that together, or they've done a lot of growth work and they'll be able to say, not anymore, just like kind of how you said, like, not anymore. Or I used to, or I can recognize it when I'm about to function that way again. And
mhm,
that's growth. Self-awareness, it doesn't mean we don't do it anymore. It just means that we sometimes can we can catch ourselves before we do it. We
mhm.
can slow things down, or in the middle of it, we recognize what we're doing and we stop. That's the self-awareness piece. So it's not like it just all goes out the window. It's just you become much more aware.
Well, and one of the pieces, like, I like to talk about how whatever the thing is that I'm doing, the pattern that I'm
Hmm.
putting into play, be it good old fashioned shields up for me, 'cause
Hmm.
I gotta be safe, and this is my safe space. So
Yep.
it's either shields up or my body like reacts with anxiety. Last week
Hmm.
was just really hard,
Hmm.
but a lot of times I'll talk about how the window between the beginning and the realization and the slowing it down or the stopping just keeps getting smaller and smaller
Yes.
and smaller.
Yes.
And I try to
Yes.
celebrate those.
Hmm.
So I want people to hear too that this isn't about once you know your type, you can just like get this formula and move forward. This is
There's no formula.
actual.
Hmm.
If you're somebody who really wants to do the work on
Hmm.
becoming super healthy, the
Hmm.
Enneagram is a fabulous tool.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and one of the things, so
Hmm.
I believe I am, in a six
Mhm.
wing seven.
Mhm.
I use the five wing for all of my organizational pieces in my
Mhm.
spreadsheets, but the true wing, I think, is I fly much better on a wing seven.
Mhm. Mhm.
And for the longest time, I just did not want to be a six. And because going into this by myself, had a fledgling coach, a young
Mhm.
person, kind of just helped me walk through a little bit. And they're like,
Mhm.
I really think you're a six. I'm like,
Mhm.
I was offended because
Yes.
because I wanted to be
Yeah.
a seven, right? And they're
Mhm.
like, but I think you have a really strong seven wing.
Yep.
And the more
Mhm.
I have embraced looking back at even just, if you look at my business, it's called the Intentional Optimist.
Mhm.
And when my story for that is when we lost my mother in 2017, I was 50, and I said,
Mm.
"I don't this is not I don't wanna end my life this way. I don't wanna
Mhm.
be where I am, and things have to change now." And so I
Mhm.
just started going through and brain dumping all the things I wanted to accomplish, or the way I wanted to show up, or the way I wanted to live. I had an 8-year-old child. I just, it was like all
Mhm.
these things, and I ended up with 6 tenets of intentional optimism that are optimistic, and then each one of them, of course, good 5 wing, has all the
Mhm.
little pieces inside, but it was optimistic, present, energetic, courageous, wise, and intentional,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
saying, "I am gonna live this way."
Mhm.
And it wasn't until, I don't know, 3 years later that I really started getting into the Enneagram, like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I just wrote myself a pathway into a healthy 6."
You did. Mhm.
And I didn't even realize it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And, I grew up overseas. I'm a missionary kid. I grew up in Seoul, Korea. When we went in the 70s, things were
Mhm.
not safe.
Mm-mm.
And,
Mhm.
you know, waking up in the middle of the night, seeing tanks rolling down
Mhm.
the street, or hearing the North Koreans came through and hatcheted up people at the DMZ, or I mean, just you name it,
Mhm.
there was
Mhm.
something. On our mountain was a gun, and we would hide in the center portion of our house whenever there were tracer bullets.
Wow.
And
Mhm.
looking back, I'm like,
Right.
how did this little six survive that?
Right.
Because you mentioned earlier, two kids are very different in the same
Mhm.
house, the same
Mhm.
everything.
Right.
My sister and I have talked about this a lot because she is, I think, a seven wing eight. She is
Mhm.
super independent,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
supercharged independent.
Mhm.
And she said, I just never, things didn't affect me the way they affected you.
Mhm.
I'm like, well, you didn't need to feel safe.
Yep. It was
I needed to
different.
feel safe.
Yeah. Well, she did. I mean, as a seven, so that 5, 6, 7 combo, that grouping right there is their focus is security. So
Yeah.
she did need to feel safe. She just took it on differently where you moved towards for safety, you moved towards community, you moved towards your family, you moved towards people
Mm,
for safety because
mm,
that's the best way you knew how to do it. And your disposition, your temperament, your sister stood independently and pushed against and said, like, I've
yes.
got this, I've got to figure this out for myself. And so it's interesting, even in the same household, like
Yeah.
the focus on how you got that need met was different.
Right.
And that's the thing is like still same need, different way that you got it
Mm,
met. And so with the Enneagram, it does look at behaviors, but we want to look below the behaviors to the motivations. It's the motivations. It's why are you doing it? That's where all the good work happens is below the surface. And so yeah, hearing that story, just you as a little girl, as just hiding, just scared, looking up. I can just visually see it. And then you coming into the world,
mhm,
as you are with all of this passion behind you. And then, like, how do I take up space? How do I do this? How do
mm,
I trust my own intuition? How do I trust myself to
mhm,
be able to be this person that I know that I'm purposeful to be? And that's
mm.
what, I think is sitting across the
Sitting
screen
here
from me
now, yeah.
today. Yeah,
Well,
which
and
is
just
beautiful.
for people to know, I mean,
Mhm.
there's plenty of therapy in my background,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
to know, but when I look at the Enneagram, I feel like it
Mhm.
has helped me, and I kinda wanna pull in your work as
Mhm.
well.
Mhm.
It has helped me a lot in my marriage.
Yes.
I shared, and I've shared with my audience that I have gone through the beginnings of a pretty full-on deconstruction,
Mhm.
but it's not a I realized after a while, I was willing as a counterphobic 6, who
Mhm.
6 are the only ones that have this thing, y'all,
Yes.
that we either run away from or we run toward,
Yes.
authority, and you can explain that if I didn't explain it well.
No, you did good. Yeah.
But
Mhm.
what was funny is I told my husband, I said, "Oh, I think I'm a phobic." And he goes, "What?" He says, "You are
Mhm.
such a counterphobic."
Mhm.
And because people look at me and say, "You're so courageous," right? I'm a gastric
Mhm.
bypass patient. I mean, I've done all kinds of things.
Wow.
And
Mhm.
I was in therapy when I had that done. It's
Mhm.
19 years ago in March. And my therapist, the counselor at the time, said, "This is the most courageous thing I've ever watched anybody do."
Mhm.
We I early menopause, like 38. And so we adopted my son, which is an
Mhm.
extremely difficult process, emotionally difficult
Mhm.
process. So I look back, I'm like, okay, I guess maybe I am counter counterphobic
Mhm.
six. But
Mhm.
the more I learn about myself, the more I look back, it's not just my husband that the relationship gets deeper with, but
Right.
I understand why he needs certain things the way he needs them,
Mhm.
and why when I decide something, I'm ready to go.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
he's just not. And
Mhm.
so we're learning for me to like get places and just tell him, I'm here. If you ever get here, that's fine. If you don't,
Mhm.
that's fine too.
Mhm.
No
Mhm.
pressure.
Right.
And when I do that, he usually goes, and tiptoes up to the
Yes.
to the line, if it's like how we're going to raise our and work with our ADHD son, or if it's
Uh-huh.
how we're going to move in ministry, or how,
Mhm.
he's the pastor. So, that I don't have any control over that. But
Right.
even when it came to deconstructing not my faith, but my structures, my institutional understandings,
Yep.
because the six is all about and reading Jesus and John Wayne by Jeanette
Yes.
was
Mhm.
just I I don't know what your denominational background is, but when I open that book and you see I have notations all out on the side, it's like, I know that person, I know that person, I
Mhm.
know that person, I
Mhm.
knew this
Mhm.
person. I was in seminary with that person. And
Mhm.
oh, that's what they meant when they said that thing about that person. And I was in the Christian music industry,
Mhm.
and I was, I
Mhm.
mean, all
Mhm.
these things. And it was something that helped me realize I have put all of my faith and all of my security, and I doubled down into not just evangelical Christianity, but politics. I doubled down into these are the answers. And walking away
Mm.
from that was
Mhm.
probably the hardest thing and the scariest
Mhm.
thing I've ever done. But it's been the most liberating to help me be the most healthy.
Mhm. Yeah.
So being able to do that and also look back at some of these wounds from my past, it's like we use that phrase in the Enneagram, but do you find that's a piece that people kind of tend to work on more? That's why you like them in therapy at the same time, or like this wounds from the past kind of thing?
Mhm. The wounding.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I am the structure, I journey with my clients. So this is what I'll say as far as like, there's not like, here's 6 weeks and this is the 6 weeks. I'm going to tell you about yourself and then go on your way. That's not the work that I do. I have clients that have been with me for years, 3, 4,
Mm.
5 years,
Mhm.
that I see regularly. And we go into those tender places.
Mm.
Because the true work of the Enneagram, it's around unconscious childhood messagings. It is like it starts early, you guys. Like our patterns of behavior start to develop as early as the age of 2, earlier than that for some kids that have had trauma in their life. We patterns of behavior really, it's cradle to grave work.
Mm.
But around the age of 2, we really begin to see these patterns develop. And so I work with clients on the experiential side of what I do as well. I help them understand where they come from, where these patterns come from. So the Enneagram, when you do deep dives into the Enneagram, there's lots of resources and things like that, but there's like the childhood stories. There's a lot of depth into that side of it, and I work on that side of it with most people. Like that's
Mm.
where I go. We're going to go into these unconscious childhood messagings that you have built your life upon. And so
Mm.
unconscious childhood messagings for the six is I can't trust myself.
No.
And so, right. And so a lot of the
Everything
times
about
that,
me is wrong. It's like, and even just as simple
yeah.
as leaving my grandparents' house in Southeast Texas and turning left instead of turning right. And in my car with my sister, she's
Hmm.
like, "You turn wrong every single time." And I'm like, "Because
Hmm.
I think I'm turning if I turn the right way,
Hmm.
then I'm thinking I'm
Hmm.
turning wrong." And it's like this
Yeah.
constant.
Yeah.
That is a beautiful example of that whole process you just described.
It's this unconscious messaging. You can't trust
Mhm.
yourself. And then what do
Yeah.
you really want to know? I'm safe. I just want to know I'm safe. And so these are the motivations when we get below the surface. So in Enneagram 7, their messaging is I can't trust anyone for anything. So these happy-go-lucky,
Yeah.
positive, energetic people, at the root of where this all stems from is this messaging is I can't trust anyone for anything. So I am in this on my own.
Mm,
And I'm not going to move towards people. I've been married for 25 plus years and it takes everything in me to move towards him for
mm,
connection. Like I
mm.
want connection, but not connection, but more like trust and safety and like you got my back, right? I'm usually like, "I'll figure it out, don't worry." He's got nicknames, that line up with that are not always nice, and I'm like, "Wow, if I didn't feel like I had to be like that right now." But, that messaging, I grew up with that messaging. I married with that messaging. I
Mm,
parented the first however many years with this unconscious messaging playing beneath the surface of everything that I did. I can't trust anyone for anything. So
mm,
this is all on me. This is all on my shoulders. I got to figure this out all by myself. I can't let my guard down. What I really want to know is that I'm going to be taken care of. That's my heart longing that I'm going to be
yeah,
taken care of on the emotional side, not so much the physical side, like finances and things like that. Like I can figure that out, but is anybody going to be there emotionally for me?
mm,
And that is the work my husband and I had to like dig out in therapy
mm,
for years because he's an Enneagram 3. And for his unconscious messaging is it's not okay for you to have your own needs or feelings.
mm,
So, or I'm sorry, your own feelings or identity. So, no, like closet your feelings and then be whatever everybody else wants you to be. So
right.
these unconscious messagings, we go into the world with these messagings, and then we go into relationships, we go into jobs, we go into friendships, all of these things, parenting with these
Yeah.
unconscious messaging. And if we're not aware of it, we're not aware of how much those messagings are affecting everything that we do.
Mm,
And so that's the work that I do. So wounding, yes. Do I work with wounding? Yes, I do. Um, but I hold space for it, hopefully in a really careful, kind way.
mm,
That our patterns of behavior, we did what we had to do to get what we needed. And
yeah.
so there's parts of our story that are not pretty. There's parts of my story that are not pretty. Um, but when I could hold space, and I had a therapist help me hold space for myself in some of my story through EMDR. Um, and when I could hold space for myself, and then I could help other people hold space for themselves and their story in that, as far as like, um, you might not be doing great right now, but you're doing the best you can. Let's figure out why.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So it is like the wounding piece is huge. Um, Getting below the surface to the why is where healing happens.
Yeah.
So we can do a lot of behavior modification. So I talk about like we can do behavior modification, which I believe in. So as far as therapy goes, like if there's a therapist that you need to do behavior modification get to the heart, yep, there's lots of different modalities to help us to work on the things that we have to work on. And so with a therapist, I don't want to discredit anybody's work.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but there's a difference between modifying our behavior and true heart transformation.
Yes.
So the heart transformation, that's where change happens. And it's not just about making somebody else happy, but it's about living how to live authentically ourselves. It's in that heart transformation. Like, I am going to be authentically myself, and who around me can hold space for me to be authentically myself. And I'm
Mm.
not talking about a mess. I'm not talking about like, I'm going to live carefree and I'm going to make crazy decisions and do what I want. That's not what I'm talking about
Right, right, right,
at all. So I'm
right.
talking about feet on the ground, understanding who you are and being accepted and valued and celebrated
Mhm.
by people around you, and
Mm.
people pulling out the best in you,
Mhm.
And so that's yeah, I'm super passionate about that work.
I can tell, and I love it, and,
Hmm.
you know, as I sit here and listen as basically a women's leadership coach,
Hmm.
I know that there are spaces, and I never experienced these growing up, right? I know
Hmm.
that there are girl groups, spaces where women say, these are my girls, these are my,"
Hmm.
and I never had that, and I think it's because I built up the wall, to say,
Hmm.
"No, that's not for me
Right.
because I don't fit in,"
Hmm.
or I don't think that way, or I don't like the girly stuff, or whatever it was. And looking back now, I'm like, I have to stop putting up the wall and and
Hmm. Me
allowing
too.
myself,
Hmm.
right? But I do want our listeners to hear as well that not everybody is completely unhealthy.
No.
No? And it's sometimes you may have already met, like, I have a group of ladies that I do
Mhm,
Marco Polo with that we kind of are learning to hold space for each other in
mhm,
this kind of faith after doubt thing,
mhm.
where we it's okay for us to say certain things,
Mhm.
but we know it's just a really safe space, and it's, like,
Right.
multi-generational, and
Mhm,
but it provides an atmosphere where,
mhm,
not all of us need one-on-one coaching,
mhm,
but for me to be able to dive into the Enneagram
mhm,
and for me to be able to say, "Oh my goodness, that message that thing that my parents just said
mhm,
to me over and over and over, I I don't think, they did," and this is the way I say it is, we are aware of what we are aware of when we're
mhm.
aware.
Yeah,
It's just the way
that's
it
good.
is,
Mhm.
and we do the best we can with what we have in
Right.
the moment, and that's what my
Mhm,
parents did, and that's what I do, and
mhm,
I constantly try to make it better. But being able to have a space where other people kind of get and understand the Enneagram,
mhm,
say,
mhm,
"Oh my gosh, this was the thing. I didn't realize this is where it comes from, and I have to stop putting up this wall
mhm.
here, or I have to stop thinking
Right.
here," and have people go, "Yay!" So there are
Mhm,
opportunities for us
mhm,
to celebrate this and talk about
mhm,
this in
mhm.
ways that don't necessarily involve like a deep dive into what feels like you almost do therapy, like a counseling kind of thing. Do you have any groups like that that you work with, or other than like following you on Instagram because and other places? Because that's like I shared before. That's most of my Instagram stories that are
Mhm.
Enneagram related are from you.
So kind.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm not doing any group work right now. I think this summer I'll launch some group work. I love what you're talking about too. Yes, not everybody, it's not it's not it does always feel exposing and it does always feel a little bit uncomfortable when you're doing Enneagram work.
Hmm.
But the people that come to me, they're in all different types of seasons. Some are really good and they just want to be they want to understand their leadership, but we have to understand where it comes from, like what's holding us back, and things like that. So as far as offering group or anything like that, I don't. I do individual sessions right now. I have a wellness retreat that I'm planning, that it for October, which will be which group work.
Hmm.
But a lot of the work that I do is like, the journey within, uncovering me,
Yeah.
uncovering, I would say like, understanding how to hold space for me so I can hold space for you. Like
Hmm.
it's that beautiful work that I do with people. And it is coaching, it's not therapy.
No, I know.
But
It's
it
just
does,
it sounds deep. Yeah.
it's beautiful. It's beautiful work that I get to hold space for people as they journey within through this tool
Yeah.
of the Enneagram. But on a corporate level, like if we're thinking about leadership and things like that, I work with a ton of leaders, and so there is a lighter dose of that, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. Like, we're going to talk about some things, but it's really like understanding as a leader, what's tripping you up, like helping you understand, why do you keep having confrontation with certain people, or
Mm.
what's difficult with you as far as like leaning into conversations and things like that. I do a lot of work with people around that space too, of just
Cool.
empathy and compassion for all types.
Mhm.
So, there's a couple that I've got right now that it's teaching them about themselves and also teaching them about their team. So it's
Mhm.
like, this is what is happening in different dynamics. This is
Yeah.
this is what's, where things come from, but it's not the deep, deep dives.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
not everybody is ready to do a deep dive, and not everybody
No.
necessarily needs a deep
Right.
dive. Um,
Yeah.
so
Hmm.
I know that you have a book out. It's or a workbook. Is it a workbook or a book?
I have a couple. The most recent one is the Enneagram in Your Marriage. Is
Right.
that the
Yeah.
one? Yep.
Yeah.
That is a workbook. It's a
Okay.
workbook, but it has application in it because I believe that information is not transformation until you activate it.
Yeah.
So,
We speak that same language.
right, you can listen all day long, but we need you
Yeah.
guys to do something with it so
Yes.
that it makes a difference and it impacts, where you're trying to go. So
Yeah.
that is my newest book. Hmm.
Okay, and that is a great place to start too if you're just wanting to look at this in your marriage, if you're just
Hmm.
wanting to kind of start exploring it,
Hmm.
because you're exploring it with somebody who supposedly cares about you and wants the best for you, and you can see
Hmm.
ways that you can do that together.
Hmm. Hmm.
As we start to wrap it up,
Hmm.
a little bit here, it's like the title of this or this podcast name is Stand Tall and
Mhm,
Own It. And
mhm,
you've
mhm,
shared a little bit of your journey and how Enneagram information has allowed you to do that. If there was one
mhm.
thing that you would say the Enneagram has allowed you to stand tall and own the most, what would that be?
Mm. Probably my failures. I
Mhm.
remember reading when I first discovered the Enneagram, like frenetic escapism. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is me. I want to frantically escape every part of my life most times. And I can see that now. So I think it's the self-awareness to the unhealthy sides of myself. So I can understand when I am reacting instead of responding.
Yeah.
And so that's been probably one of my favorite parts of this journey is really understanding what's happening within myself. And
Mm.
so that self-awareness piece.
So how did other people around you respond? Because I know that when people start personal growth, and I start
Mhm,
with people like at the very beginning, it's like personal
mhm,
growth 101, and you need to understand that as soon as you start growing, there are going to be some people in your life that'll be like, what is up? You need to stop
mhm.
this, right?
Yeah.
Do you find that people still have that with the Enneagram as
For
well?
like me personally or the people that I work with.
Let's talk about you personally.
Okay, me personally. No, the community that I am in, I live in Franklin, Tennessee, right outside of Nashville, and I feel like that there's like a hub here
Yeah.
that is just hungry for self-awareness and growth work. And most people have a faith-based background to some degree in this area. So the community that I'm with, they were just like, yes,
Oh,
do the
good.
work, do the work, do the work. My husband, 100% linked arms with me to do the work.
Mm,
Um, my family, I think that, they're supportive. Some of them understand it better than others. And I think that my girlfriend, she always says, like, authentic, always transparent with a few. And so I'm
yeah.
gonna always be authentically myself. But as far as the deep work that I do personally, um, there's transparency with only a few people around that work. And
Yeah.
so, I think there's definitely I like took my voice back. There's some definitely
Mm,
big changes that happened in the way that my husband and I functioned after 20 years of marriage even,
mm,
where
mhm.
I was like, "I don't think you asked me to do that. I think you told me to do that." And he was like, "Oh my gosh, I totally told you. Like, I'm sorry." I'm like, "Yeah, you're gonna have to take an Uber to go pick your car up. I have things to do." Like there's a lot of um pieces of it that I think it's been a dance,
Yeah,
but as far
yeah,
as community, I have a great support system.
yeah.
Um,
That's good.
and yeah, and I
Yeah,
think the people that I work with though, it's not always that way. So
yeah,
you just got to carefully dance
yeah,
around who you share with. Not
yeah.
everybody is safe.
Well, and as a 6, of course, I've learned that as well, and
Mhm.
I think I operate from the authenticity
Mhm.
always, but I have not always operated from the transparency with a
Right.
few
Mhm.
because I want so badly to be understood and known, and so
Mhm.
I have overshared, and I have allowed myself to go deep, and then I've been hurt, not on
Mhm.
purpose, not like anybody
Mhm.
tried to hurt me, but it was
Mhm.
like, this person didn't need to be inside the circle,
Mhm.
Andrea,
Right.
and so
Mhm.
learning that is been a real maturity piece for me.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
being willing to say, and I also talk about this within core values. It's like my top core value would be freedom of thought. And it's like, this is me
Mhm.
accepting that I have thoughts that are valid and that I can think them. And so, even just thinking about somebody, my husband, as an
Mhm.
example, would say, wouldn't you think this? Or wouldn't you agree that this?
Mhm.
And as soon as we hit that whole Enneagram piece, I'm like, that language needs to go.
Mhm.
And so he
Mm,
does, he
mhm.
changes
Yep.
because
Mhm.
he knows that I want to be vulnerable and intimate in our conversations, and
Right.
if I'm not safe in thinking for myself, then I can't. So it
Mhm.
literally goes that far down.
Mhm.
It's really
Mhm.
fun to watch.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so, okay, this has been great. We could probably go on for several hours, and I would probably pick your brain. So, before we go, though, where's the best place for people to find you? I know that you have lots of freebies out there. Like you have
Mhm.
a whole website page full of them.
I know, right? What am I doing?
No, it's great. great. Yes.
So I do have a website. So it's enneagramwithjb.com. You can go there. There's freebies. Definitely. You can book a session if you're interested and learning more about what I do or anything like that. My social media, I'm most active on Instagram, and that's Enneagram with JB. But there's, it's on Facebook. But I'm going to warn you, if you talk to me on Facebook, I'm not going to talk back. So if you want me to comment, like respond, find me on Instagram, and I do respond, I promise.
Yes. I can say
But
it. She responds.
I pay attention. So, but there's TikTok as well. Like, I don't know if you guys, I love TikTok to get lost in, but as far as working on that site, I'm like, oh, I just want it to be for fun.
Yeah.
But
I throw my videos
enneagramwithjb.com.
up there, but I don't.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know. Yeah. I don't
It's
know
kind of
why.
fun.
It is.
Um,
But yeah, so I'd love to engage with anybody that wants to have a conversation with me about Enneagram.
Good, thank you. Because, like you said, you do have a very gentle approach to it, and the sevenness of you, that enthusiasm, it comes through, and it's
Mm,
very engaging, and it's easy to handle from this side. So, thank you so much for your time, and I am excited to continue to learn more and to get to know you even better as we both kind of stand tall and own all of it.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for having me.